What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Session X podcast. In this episode, I sit down with Brett Sheerin. You might know him on Instagram as Maui True North. Brett is one of the kindest and most humble dudes I know. Some of my favorite takeaways from this conversation, besides Brett's incredible New Jersey attitude, is the work he does with Adaptive Maui. I hope you enjoy this podcast with Brett and I. I've been obsessed with action sports my entire life. A single universal language of pure stoke. In these timeless moments, we experience the greatest joys and purest emotions. Life makes sense, completely present, in harmony with nature. In studying the evolution of extreme sports, it's easy to identify a direct link to ultimate human performance, monk-like focus, body and mind mastery, mind-blowing applications of courage, confidence, and creativity. But where does it come from? How do we get it? And most importantly, how can more people access these superhuman qualities? My name is Matt Schollard. I'm a peak performance and mindset coach, and I'm also an extreme athlete. Together with some of the greatest action sport professionals on earth, we'll drop into the powerful lessons found within their chosen disciplines and explore how you can apply them toward your own journey of greatness. Welcome to Session X Podcast, the intersection of extreme sports and peak performance. You can hang. You can be like, what's the guy on Joe Rogan? What's the guy?
Jamie.
Jamie. You can be Jamie.
Jamie, pull that up.
Yeah. You want to? Yeah, you can hang out. Shit. All right. What's the hard time? What time you got to be done by?
1.
You gotta be done. So we got like less than 30 minutes or so.
Yep.
To ham it up.
34 minutes.
Boom. Welcome to Session X Podcast. I'm joined today by my brother, my friend, Brett Sheerin, also known as Maui True North. Brett, welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me.
Man, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, you too, man.
So I was recalling the last time I saw you, and prior to that, you just reminded me that you were indeed in a Donna Summer music video.
Yes.
Yeah. So obviously the show, intersection of extreme sports and peak performance, I think you've basically met the criteria for a life well lived. How'd you get into the Donna Summer video in the first place?
Oh, God. Yeah.
It was during your male modeling days.
Yeah. Well, I'm 51 years old. So back when I was 22, I believe, just hanging out in a club in North Jersey where I grew up. Saw an old high school friend. She was talking to this big, tall, good looking guy. And she introduced me. He says, "You model?" I go, "No." He goes, "You want to?" I said, "Sounds fun." You know, like every other impulsive decision I made. He goes, "Sure." He goes, "Yeah, my agent's over here." Introduced me to this guy. And, the proximity to New York City was close, so it was easy to just start going in. The guy's like, yeah, I like your look. I'll start helping you get going. And next, long short of this, a couple of years later, Donna Summer was doing a remake of the song I Feel Love. And it sounds like the same damn song to me, but it was apparently a remake in 1995. So I got somehow casted in to go in the video. So it was like me, 2 other guys, and a girl, and that's it. And yeah, it was pretty hilarious. Black and white video. So
do you look back and you're like, man, that was the peak. You look back on some of the waves you have and you're like, yeah, well, I was also in this music video.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. You know, it was a one-day shoot. I got paid $300 to hang out in a hotel room on 6th Avenue, New York City. It was like, yeah, whatever. And then I didn't actually see the video for 15 years. So I shot it, and shortly after I got out of that whole scene, because I had bigger aspirations, and those aspirations were to get drunk and ski as much as possible, which I did. That'll segue into extreme sports. So at that point, I was kind of tired of the whole thing, and wasn't really making bank anyway, and I was over kind of the rock star lifestyle. So
the rock star male model lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, I got to spend
going to all the Wawas and spraying gasoline on each other.
It did have its perks. So I got to spend 5 months in Italy, and then at that point I'd never really traveled outside the tri-state area. So all of a sudden I was in Milan, Italy for like 5 months and speak a word of English, of Italian, and learned some language, learned the culture. It was an amazing experience. That was before the internet.
Oh yeah.
It cost $7 just to call home and connect. As soon as you said hello, click, that was $7.
Well, after you went through the rotary dial of all the numbers. I grew up overseas, and every time you had to call, it was like the rotary, and you get to the last 17th digit, and you like, oh man, and you had to start all over again.
It was like a five minute excursion just to get the number through. Yeah, we didn't have answer machines, so we missed the call. But it was a great experience. Yeah, you write postcards home, letters home, stuff like that. But
So home, you grew up in New Jersey.
Yeah, born and raised Jersey boy. So if you ever seen the show The Sopranos, that's what I grew up in.
That's your claim?
Yep.
Yeah.
That was it.
Okay. Was there like an actual family in the what's the town called?
I grew up in West Orange, New Jersey.
West Orange. Okay.
Yeah, my mom's side of the family is all Italian. My dad was Irish and English, and they all grew up in that Essex County area that's based on. So the show's synopsis, whatever, is about the Italians that settled in Newark, New Jersey, and worked their way through the suburbs, specifically Essex County, and are still there, things like that. I did not have any family members that were connected or involved in any way, but
I did.
Everyone knows somebody.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah,
right.
my Jersey roots definitely are connected. I think my grandmother, like her claim was running numbers, like in my uncles and my mother's diapers. I can't imitate her without pretending I'm smoking.
Oh, of course.
We ran numbers, Matthew.
That's right, Matthew. Of course. How are you?
Yeah.
Everything says Amanda.
And then surfing though. But how your true love is skiing when you were 3 years old.
Yes.
Where'd you even ski at?
Well, Vernon Valley.
The Poconos.
Yeah. Well, there was a resort, Vernon Valley, back then. Now it's called Hidden Creek. Oh no, not Hidden Valley. What the hell's the name of that? Oh my God, what the heck is the name of that?
Now you're showing that you're 51.
Mountain Creek. I think it's called Mountain Creek. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was Vernon Valley, Great Gorge back in the day, and it was 3 years. My dad started skiing, and he started taking us up there, and definitely. Certain things are born into me, and a little bit of an impatient temper is one of them.
Okay.
So when I was 3 years old, my first run, I skied down the bunny hill, and I hit a bush, and I made my lip bleed.
Do you remember this? Is this like your first memory?
I do have like a vague memory of it.
Yeah.
And I threw my shit all over the place and threw an absolute fit and said I quit. And I went into the lodge, and my mom took me there. I had a hot cocoa and settled down. I said, let's go back. And my mom's like, well, I thought you quit. And I was like, no, we're going back.
What was it? Can you recall what it was that you wanted to go back for?
I don't remember, but it's still to this day. I'll like, if I'm learning something and I'm not good at it right away, I MF it. I'm like, I over it. I'm screaming, throwing an absolute, conniption about it. And then all of a sudden and then I can't wait to go back and do it again.
Do you need hot cocoa?
Yeah, with marshmallows.
That's it. So that's a really cool description. So there's something in like when you look at performance psychology and sort of the science that surrounds peak performance, it very much operates on this continuous cycle. And the way the cycle operates, it's struggle, release, flow, and recovery. Right. You can't have these optimal experiences without struggle. Otherwise, it's not worth it, right? Like if you had just gotten up on the hill and had this like rip shred in time and didn't actually have to struggle for it, it wouldn't be as rich of an experience. It wouldn't have been as rewarding of an experience had you not. So what you're describing there is you had this struggle. You go down, you hit your lip, you bust it, you're 3 years old. Most of our first memories are traumatic. That sounds like a traumatic experience. Mine is in upstate New York. I saw a dead deer tied to someone's hood that just went hunting. And I was like, oh, I think, yeah, that's like my traumatic memory, but whatever. So you have this connection where you're struggling. You release, you go in, you have your hot cocoa, you have your marshmallow, and then it's like, okay, cool. You go back out and then you flow. Dude, that's that cycle that just exists at these macro and micro levels throughout all of our lives. Yeah. So as you experience this like in life now, you're an avid jiu-jitsu player, you're a small business owner, like you probably experience very similar things to that.
Yes.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, to tie into, the theme of your podcast, it's wonderful, by the way, you're doing. It's awesome.
I love your show.
Thanks. I love impromptu Instagram show. Growing up back then, I was undiagnosed ADHD, and I also had learning disabilities, which I didn't find out until I was 24 when ADHD, all that stuff started coming out. And I was like, this is definitely me, but I'm not going to bother telling anyone this because I've been trying to tell people my whole life something's wrong, but I don't know what it is and I can't figure it out, but I can't pay attention. So I'd be sitting in class going, pay attention. You're going to do this. Just listen to what the teacher says. And all of a sudden I look out the window, the flag's blowing, and I'm thinking of which way the wind's going offshore at the beach and wondering how the surf's going, and I'm gone. And I wake up because the bell rang, and I'm like 45 minutes just went by. Like I blacked out almost, but I'm wandering in my brain, and I missed the assignments. On to the next class. This went on over and over again most of my life. And then, looking back, nutrition and whatever, sleep. But so with those being said, whenever I taught myself something or took a lesson, I know what it took for me to learn.
Okay.
And then now that I teach water sports myself, I apply these same principles to my students. If I see them getting frustrated, I don't push them through. I pull them out to get that hot cocoa.
Right.
And then funny enough, recently and I do this a lot with people, but for an example, my friend Jackie started taking lessons with me, and she's an athletic girl. I mean, she's a personal trainer and gym rat and all that stuff, and I think even bikini model, whatever. But point of that was she was kind of struggling with like just learning the basics of the kite. And we're sitting on the beach, and she started to get it. And then somehow she brought up a scene from a movie, Forgetting Sarah Marshall, where the guy's teaching a surf lesson. He goes, you know, do I'm your kumu, do nothing, do less. All right, now you're boggy board and do something more, right? So we were joking about that, and I realized, okay, I got her talking something she knows and she's comfortable. So I let her go in that. Just, you know, we're just rapping back and forth, and I love movie quotes. So for 15 minutes, she absolutely flew this kite perfectly without a blip. And I said nothing but the movie and this, and I got her in her comfort zone. Yeah. Which I'll do with some high level people too, if they're CEOs or whatever. I'll get them talking about something they know,
right?
Something they're comfortable with. And I see the shift, and then it all applies. So anyway, when I finally said, okay, in my head, there's enough time, let's get back to the lesson. I go, okay, try this. And immediately she started screwing up. And I go, do you realize you flew that kite for 15 minutes without me telling you how to do anything perfectly? Because we were talking about anything but the lesson. And then you, as soon as I gave you direction, you started messing up again. So some people are too in their head.
Absolutely.
Or some people are too smart. Some of my most difficult students are actually very superior, high level thinkers, successful people, company owners. I mean, I've worked with billionaires. I've worked with, nuclear physicists. That's when I learned about left-right dyslexia. Actually, I originally learned about it from my ex-wife because she was in the backseat of the car with my son who was a baby, and she's telling me to make the left while she's pointing right. And I go, what the hell? And I'm looking in the mirror thinking I got the reflection messed up. And I go, what? I go, which way? She goes, go left. And she's pointing to the right. And then I turn into like a military drill sergeant. You mean to tell me you don't know your fucking left from your fucking right? What the hell? She's like, no, actually, I don't. I go, holy shit.
Oh, man.
So then years later, I'm teaching a kite. I was teaching kite surfing, and one of the other instructors, this is when we worked for another school, and she goes, Brad, I've been working with this guy for 3 days. I can't get anywhere with him. Do you want him? I said, yeah, let me take him out there. And he's back before headset. So I'm body dragging out, hanging on his harness. And I go, all right, pull it to the left. And he slammed it right. And I go, bro, do you have dyslexia? And he goes, yes, I'm horrible at dyslexia. I go, that explains a lot. I said, what do you do for work? He goes, I'm a nuclear physicist. I go, okay, so we're going to use colors. You're going to pull green, red, or it was a blue, red, whatever it was. So I ask people when I first start kite lessons with them, do they have any dyslexia? I see it in surfing too. If I say put your left foot forward and people put the right, I'm like, all right, you're dyslexic. I get it. But you don't see there's lots of forms of dyslexia.
Yeah.
And many people have left-right dyslexia.
What's the color association? Where does that come from?
People just seem to know a visual better. Instead of saying left and right, you just go, because on the bar, you have different colors.
Right, red and green or.
Yeah, Cabrina bar I fly has black and white. So I'll be like, pull white, pull black, or pull red, blue, whatever the bar is. Or sometimes I use the ocean or the beach. I'm like, if you're going out, pull back to the beach. Use your beachside hand and use your oceanside hand. So
are they able to like make those synapses in their brains quick enough?
It works great. Yeah,
it does.
Yeah. So it's funny you talk about process. When I give people instructions, sometimes I remember I had this one woman. It was probably one of the only lessons I've ever had where the woman actually quit, but she blamed herself, not me. And she said when I first worked with her that she had ridden before. I go, okay, well, we're just going to start from the beginning and just kind of go through the basics so you understand my terminology. We're on the same page. You got the basics. You might have a few bad habits to correct. So we worked down the beach for a while. Then I sent her out for a body drag, and she did everything you should not do. And we had the headsets on, and everything I told her to do, she did the polar opposite, pulled in the bar super hard, sheeted in, flung herself through the air. And I'm like, can you hear me? She goes, yes. I go, they're on. Yes, you can hear me. Great. Okay, don't do what you just did because you're going to get hurt. So just, be calm and do this again. I told her what to do. She did the exact opposite, flew through the air again. And I go, okay, and I somehow managed to get her into the beach. And it was funny because she was pretty rattled. And I said, just to make sure these are on, can you hear me? She goes, yes, they were on the whole time. I could hear you the whole time. She goes, I'm just so in my head. And I go, okay, were you one of those people in school that did really good academically? She goes, yes, I'm amazing at academics. I said, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
I go, and I've told people this for years when they're like this. I go, what your problem is? And it's a backhanded compliment. I said, you're too smart for your own good. I said, you got to dumb it down. You give me some high school kid from, wherever that dropped out of high school and like Doug's bong hits, but he's a surfer. I go, they'll pick it up 2 seconds, 2 lessons. They're out on their own. They get it right away because it's a feeling sport. So they feel for it. So everyone has their process.
Absolutely. There's definitely a kinesthetic versus like a cerebral approach to something. And it's that cerebral, like overthinking versus just intuitively feeling it. Right.
Yeah.
Like for us that are, borderline Neanderthal, it's like, well, yeah, of course it makes sense. I'm harmonizing the energy. I'm moving my body. I'm finding my relatability with it.
Yeah. Actually touching on back to the ADHD thing.
Yeah,
I
please.
found out when I took a whole mind bender test, it was a full day thing. I found out, the psychiatrist gave me the breakdown of what I'm good at, what I'm not. She goes, oh, you're terrible at math, which is true. She goes, your reading's subpar, but she goes, you place in the top 2% in the country for visual learning. She goes, do you remember like things you see on TV? I go, yeah. I'm like,
I communicate in movie quotes.
Yes. Absolutely. My entire dialogue is pretty much movie quotes and forgetting stuff. I said, yeah. I go, well, what the hell do I do with that now? As I apply to life. But to tie things back in your theme of your podcast, I did end up in corporate world at one point, and it was it was fine. It was cushy. It was back in Jersey. It was like heat in the winter, air conditioning in the summer, fine. But I was part of the masses, which I felt like, oh wow, I settled in life.
Yeah,
and I was kind of bummed out on myself for that. And I'd been a ski bum previously. I went to Tahoe for a year and back east, bumping, bump ski and all that stuff, and had that fun. And then, but then I got laid off, and I came to Hawaii for a vacation to North Shore, Oahu. And I'm like, man, I was like, at that time, I think I just turned 30. I was like, I never really I always loved surfing. I don't know where the bug came from, but going to Jersey Shore, I guess saw people do it, saw it on TV. And I'm like, I could do that. I knew like I'm a surfer and someday I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And I used to beg my parents for a surfboard. They wouldn't get me one. So I was like trying to stand up on boogie boards and learn to ride waves on boogie boards and all that. And then, when I was 14, I finally, my mom was seeing a guy who surfed, and he goes, oh, I'll take you surfing. I'm like, when? Let's go.
Right.
And he took me out. He thought he was going to have to push me on a wave. I paddled right out, turned around, caught a wave, stood up, rode it, and turned and rode it. And he was like, what the fuck?
Your first wave, right? You stood and rode down the line.
Yeah. He just I went right down. It was a small wave, but nonetheless, I took it. And he was just like, holy crap, And I was like, yeah, and it was on.
That's insane.
Yeah.
When I want to go back to school and to having undiagnosed ADHD, but learning your own process for learning, I'm sure you rode BMX and skated and did all of those sports too. And did you find that you were able to focus more when you were in these elevated consequential sports?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So, I played ice hockey in high school, and that can be pretty extreme, that's for sure.
No shit.
I remember taking a penalty shot one time, and it was like a Friday night. It was like some at a movie, we were D division team, whatever, but it was still like we used to pack the house. Everyone loved hockey in my town. So, under the lights, all this pressure, and I took a penalty shot and I scored. But I actually remember to this day, like how time slowed down.
Absolute time dialysis.
Yeah. Yep. And I put it in there. And I think I remember telling someone that, and they were like, oh yeah, that's different for most people. Like, yeah, I was totally slowed things down. But anyway, as an adult, I've taken almost every ADHD medication on the market. I'm not years off that, but except for Adderall, because I knew that was straight meth, basically. Right, it's like what Oxycontin is to heroin, Adderall is to methamphetamine. So I went to that. But I took this stuff called Strattera at one point, which had horrible physical side effects. I had to get off it, but mentally it worked really well. And I remember the psychiatrist saying, a lot of big wave surfers, adrenaline junkies, time slows down when they're in that moment because it's a shot of adrenaline into the brain. And that's what Strattera did. It sends little adrenaline to the brain. So funny enough, I try to touch on that during my daily life, is that sometimes I'll try not to eat in the morning until later, because when you get in a little bit of a ketosis state, there's some adrenaline running. So like a little bit of stress in my body, I feel like keeps me more focused. I think when you eat and you're digesting, you can go into a bit more of a rest and digest type state, and whatever. Then you got all kinds of insulin, stuff like that. So if I'm on an empty stomach, and I used to do this by accident because I'm not good at feeding myself. I like run out of the house and go do lessons all day. But the weird part was I felt focused all day.
Yeah.
And whereas when I was eating a lot, especially when I was in a bodybuilding at one point, back in Jersey, all that stuff. But
back in Jersey,
eating 5 meals a day, I was like, I had to eat every 2 hours, and I'd get shaky and spaced out if I didn't. So now that I eat less, I'm actually more focused. Of course, I eat and I fuel my body, but So you're absolutely spot on with the whole adrenaline thing and time slowing down.
Yeah.
And I crave that.
So there's a key set of markers that are present when you're in flow state. So there's this guy, he's a Hungarian psychologist named Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He's kind of like the godfather of the positive psychology that we have now come to know as flow state. And he identified this like seemingly mystical experiences that people would describe. Like at the time it was like rock climbers, jazz musicians, chess grandmasters. And it was these people who would be like, well, time completely either sped up, an hour went by in a fraction of a second, or I felt like I was completely focused and it was a matter of seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Flow is incredibly prevalent in extreme sports. And the reason being is that there needs to be a certain set of conditions. There's 22 currently known flow triggers. And these are things like risk to skill ratio, challenge to skill ratio, the amount of risk, the amount of consequence, how emotionally invested we are in it, the amount of immediate feedback, and so on and so forth. And there's 22 of these. The more that are present, the more fertile the conditions are to access flow state. So for you, when you had your ice hockey game in high school, you had a goal, right? I want to score this penalty shot. You have immediate feedback. I either make the shot or I don't make the shot. You have a lot of risk. You have social risk. You have your teammates. You have the opposing team. You want to win. You have your emotional investment in it. You are intrinsically motivated to be here. You want to be doing this thing. So you start to take in all these different triggers, and then your brain goes hyper focused. It releases dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, anandamide, all these neurochemicals that are your brain has evolved to narrowly drive focus to this pinpoint thing, so that you can apply all of your energy and focus on that ice hockey, on that puck. And that's what we experience with big wave surfing. That's what we experience with kiteboarding and freediving and all these sports that are, relatively extreme. We have so many flow triggers. Flow being one of the most significant states of being a human can find themselves in terms of learning capacity and enjoyment and fulfillment and quality of life. That's why we do what we fucking do. That's why we go out to Hokipa or Jaws or any of the numerous spots around here and do the sports that we do. It's because we're chasing that sense of presence and that feeling of accomplishment that only exists within those environments.
That's an amazing explanation.
That's
like a medical explanation. Thanks for sharing that.
For sure. And what you're describing with fasting, it's its own set of circumstances. I too experienced that. With fasting, you do have a level of focus, which is a little bit different, I think, than flow.
Sure.
They do say that flow follows focus. So as long as we can be hyper focused on something, flow state, should the conditions rise and we have the appropriate triggers, will be what's next. Yeah. And if we're fasted and we don't have to waste the resources on digestion, which I'm absolutely a huge proponent of intermittent fasting, the conditions are a little bit more fertile. So definitely, man.
Well, I realized so taking the extreme sports thing into regular life, it was interesting because once upon a time I was married, and 4 marriage counselors later, we ended. But I learned a few things in there, and one of which I was marrying my ex-wife, just saying, I wish he could focus on life like he does his sports, because when it comes to, if I was going dawn patrol to surf. For those who don't know what dawn patrol is, you're going surfing early. You're getting up at 4, 5 o'clock. It's dark, and you gotta be prepared to get out there. Especially at this time, we lived in town, Honolulu. So to beat the crowds, I had to paddle out by 4:30 with the lights on the building, just enough to see to get through the channel to spot Kaiser's, which is notoriously crowded. I'm like, I just want to get a few waves before the crowd gets out there. So I was ready. The night before, adrenaline's going. I got my board by the door. I got my wax leash, and everything's ready to go because I don't want to miss out, right? The FOMO's kicking in. And my ex-wife's watching me because everything else I'm lackadaisical and whatever. And I was a bit of a lifetime slacker. And I would make these things happen. So eventually, as you know, I'm a small business owner. And when I started that, I get a lot of adrenaline out of my business. So I have to be prepared and ready to give people who have hired me or if I'm a send instructor, and my adrenaline pumps off that. I get such an adrenaline rush out of what I do for work that's feeding that too. And I find myself being focused, forward thinking, being prepared, having the right gear for the people and preparing their experience that I have to do. So it's like a show. It's almost like, I'm going to put on a show to a certain extent, because I got to be ready to perform to get, sometimes it's people's lives may be at stake or personal injury, or they just want them to have a 5-star experience, the best experience they can. And I don't want to let that down. They're here on Maui for maybe 1 week. It's their dream that I got to try to make, happen.
Yeah.
And then the fact that I'm a single father and I have to pay for stuff, that also gets my adrenaline pumping as well.
I mean, everything you're describing are adequate flow triggers, right? There's an incredible amount of risk. You have risk for financial risk. You have credibility, risk to your credibility. You want to be a small business owner. You have immediate feedback. Are my guests satisfied? So I mean, all of what you're describing exists on a macro and a micro scale. Micro is those getting up and doing those dawn patrols. That's a very selfish experience, right? Like I'm chasing this, but then you apply it externally to passion and maybe purpose with your business. Now it's like, well, no, exists outside of me. I want to make sure that my guests, my clients are receiving the absolute best that they possibly can. So that's going to drive you into that heightened state for sure, bro.
Well, it's like that meme you see going around Instagram, I've seen it anyway. It says something like, if your life doesn't scare the shit out of you, you're not living.
You're not doing it right.
You're not doing it right. Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
And my life scares me on a daily basis, having a kid to take care of and, and his mom, that's a whole nother story. But you know what I mean? It's like, you got kids and you get it. Like there's financial responsibility, there's business things. And, I don't have the big 401k retirement plan through a company. It's like by each day I got to get up and make something happen or see what's going on. My life definitely scares me. And the funny thing is I'm not okay with being too comfortable.
Yeah.
I get bored and then I got to find a way. In the past, it was always like when I was drinking a long time ago, so I've been sober 23 years now. And in the past, whenever I would get back to even, I'd be like, okay, let's just go mess this up again, right? And take another hole. But I got adrenaline out of digging my way out. Yeah. So now I try to keep focused on getting ahead and allow myself to, or things happen, the fires just happen and that shut down my business while I'm rebounding. But nonetheless, I mean, God, that's a whole nother podcast in itself. But, my adrenaline's kind of going on a daily basis. So in a way, it's kind of funny. As much as I love the sports and the surfing, the kiteboarding, a lot of times I don't feel as if I need it as much as I used to because my adrenaline's going all the freaking time.
Yeah, that's a really awesome realization. But absolutely, like we need goals, right? So if you do have a set of circumstances that requires you to dig yourself out of, you have a goal, you have an end state, whether it's baseline or comfortable, whatever it is, you know where you're going. You have immediate feedback. I'm either doing the thing or I'm not doing the thing. You have risk, right? Risk it can be subjective or it can be very real. Like, well, I need to put food on the table. I have to feed, I have to take care of my son. I have to make sure he's taken care of and I'm taken care of. So what we find with the extreme sports though, at least I have experienced in my own personal journey, has been they're sustainable. Right. Yeah. I experienced a lot of combat related trauma and found myself with somewhat destructive behaviors, trying to seek that level of upregulating. And it was through kiteboarding, it was through surfing, it was through paddling across channels that I was like, okay, well, this is the level of extreme that I need. This is the level of intensity that I need. And also it's sustainable. So for me, there was like a level of personal responsibility and accountability in leaning into these extreme sports. And that's why I built this entire program out of. It's like, for me, my personal belief is that extreme sports are the shortest path to enlightenment. Everything that we could ever want is found in the barrel of a wave. You tell me when you're sitting out at cloud break and you're tucked in, you're goofy foot too, aren't you?
Regular.
That's right. Yeah. So you're on your backhand, just dropping it down the line on cloud break. Yeah. That's the meaning of life, bro. For me, there's nothing better than that.
Oh man, that's like the pure hit right there. That cloud break wave on a barrel there, and just see, even if you're not, just the shape of that wave and just a gold nugget, like everything you've just lived for just led up to that moment. And so going to mindset, actually, to share this, before I started the business and ended up at Cloud Break, I was working in the timeshare industry as one of those marketing people that annoyed you and try to get like you and Amanda walking down the sidewalk and be like, hey guys, try to start a conveation, act like your friend, then shove you into a sales presentation for 90 minutes.
Secrets of the trade.
Yeah, for a couple of damn luau tickets. But anyway, I hated myself doing it. And so doing that for 2 years, trying to support a kid. I went through the divorce. I mean, I bottomed out again. It was just horrible. I was dead broke. My son and my ex-wife moved to the mainland, and I was left penniless and broken, trying to make child support and survive. So I started. I taught water sports before I was in that industry, but I went back in the industry to try to get more of a stable job. I was still doing a little bit on the side, but I started pulling people out of there for surf lessons because I was so desperate. And people were like, "Oh, what do we do around here?" I'm like, "Well, you going surfing?" And they're like, "Oh, we want to." And I'm like, "Oh, where can we go?" I'm like, "Well, I can take you out." I started doing that, risking my job.
Yeah.
Just do that. But I had to do what I do to survive. And eventually it started taking a life of its own. And I was just like, "Oh, maybe I should finally cut the cord on this job thing and start a business on it." And I never started a business before. Again, I was kind of always a little bit of a slacker, you might say. Never really achieved anything too great in business. I'll say that, And so it was the scariest thing I ever did. But I started using mindset because I realized I had a very limited way of thinking. I had a negative, limited way of thinking. And I was working with a therapist who used to say, he'd go, because I always had this way of downplaying everything I said. So if I said something good about myself, I had to level it off with something bad. So if someone asked me like, "Are you a good surfer?" I'd be like, "Yeah, well, I'm not sponsored or anything, but I can surf." Something like that. And he would make me exercise this to say 3 things you're good at and then say nothing else after, like to downplay it. And I go, he's like, "So what are 3 things you're good at?" I'm like, "Skiing, surfing, kiteboarding." And it was like holding back, trying to throw up to not try to balance it.
But yeah, right.
Yeah, but I'm not that good. I'm not sponsored. I'm not, whatever. And he goes, "Just say that." And so I started to on the beach walk, miserable, trying not to basically kill myself or lose my shit at night while I'm trying to talk to people, walking by. I started really and morning meditation every morning for like 5 minutes. I would just set a timer and just imagine my life without limitations. Yeah. What would it look like if I pulled the limits off? Even if it seemed ridiculous, just imagine it. And I started to imagine it. And one of the manifestations was to own a business of some sorts that catered to water sports, getting people stoked, that I enjoyed. And then someday I just want to get to Fiji somehow to surf. I don't know how that came. But, I'm watching people on Instagram, like friends I have here, going to Fiji. And I'm like, geez, I want to go on a surf trip. I want to do something. I never travel. When I leave Hawaii, it's always to go home, see family in New Jersey, or see my son in Colorado, who now lives with me, thank God. So I'm going to take him to Fiji this summer, one way or another.
Yeah.
And that was another thing. My verbiage was important. So I always used to say, I'm going to do this if this happens. So I stopped the if. I removed if out of the equation. And I would just say things like, "I'm going to do this," and just pause or just not say anything more. So I started saying, "I'm going to go to Fiji and surf one day." So eventually when I got my business going and I was, teaching kiteboarding mostly and some surf lessons and doing things like that. And eventually one of my manifestations of thinking in my, what do you call it? Not just fun life, but more rewarding, was to help the community in some way, give back in some way. So I started thinking, well, what can I do? And then the Adaptive Maui thing came up.
Glad you brought that up. That's where I wanted to go next, man, for sure.
So I started doing tandem kite surfing with people, taking people who are, not kite surfers that don't have to take a lesson. They just take someone for a ride, usually a smaller person. You got a 100-pound girl. That's where I started. I was like, all right, take someone out, started learning how to do it, taking some bigger people out. But I had a weight limit, of course. But I thought how amazing it would be to take a paraplegic out. So eventually my partner's friend, Sarah Foley, who goes by Vertical Blonde on Instagram. I got to check her out. She's amazing. But my girlfriend had said, "Oh, my friend Sarah's paraplegic." And I said, "Well, ask her if she wants to go kiteboarding." So I contacted her and she was like, "How could I say no?" And I was like, "All right, cool. Come down to the beach. We'll take you out." I don't know how we're going to do this, but we're going to figure it out. So we figured it out. Took her for a ride. It was amazing. And my friend Jen Gladwin, who I didn't know at the time, had saw me do it. And she does a lot of foundation work, Kalea Foundation, 501c3 stuff. I knew nothing about any of this. And she said, there's nothing on Maui for adaptive needs people. What can we do? And I was like, I don't know. I've never done anything like this, whatever. But so let's just talk to Adventure Sports Maui, the shop that I work with. And Colette runs the shop. She's a friend of mine. And so let's just have a meeting at the shop and just invite people from around the community, from adaptive needs people to whoever wants to be involved with it, and see what people need. What can we do? So we had a meeting there, and all these people, from wheelchairs to prosthetic legs, and Josh Bogle showed up, and he's blowing up right now. I mean, he's a quadruple amputee. That's a whole nother story, but
surfing, kiting, guy's killing it.
Yeah, guy's doing everything. Incredible. And he's like, "Yeah, I want to kite." And then there was one lady there, it was just, local Hawaiian lady. And she goes, "I just want to be able to go to the beach. She can't get to the beach by the water. So eventually we raised enough money to get these things called beach tracks. So people could just roll themselves out on the sand if they need it, or you come, if someone comes here and they want to rent them, they get these beach tracks. So we take these things for granted. And Jen has just done amazing work with the fires and everything. She's gotten over 200 people wheelchairs. That's all her. She's done amazing. I do a little bit more like the in-water, hands-on stuff, and then Jen calls me like, all right, we need someone to help out with this. I'm like, all right, I know someone who could help out with that, whatever, from kayak tours to surf lessons. But anyway, so getting back to the Fiji thing, I even started to just manifest in a way of looking at plane tickets. Just to, I heard about that. If you want to manifest a trip, just start looking at plane tickets, even if you don't really think you're going to go. So I started doing that. And then my friend Lauren Lipcon, who is part of like the tech world, business world, was invited here for a kiteboarding event. And I'd met her, and she had posted on Instagram shortly after our meeting, oh, next month. And I'm going. And she posted this picture of Namotu Island. And I go, where's that? She goes, oh, it's Namotu Island in Fiji. Ben Wilson runs this retreat there. I go, oh, yeah, I heard about that. I said, well, just half joking. I go, ask him if he ever needs a coach. And she says, well, in the message, she goes, ask him yourself. Here's his email. And I said, what the hell? So I wrote him an email, and it's, gave a quick bio, and we had some mutual friends, and they called me like Sasha, his assistant, called me 2 days later and says, oh, yeah, hey, Brad, how you going? Yeah, we thought, we checked you out. We thought it'd be good to bring you out here and try you out as a coach, and, we'll pay for you to come out. And if we like you, we'll bring you back the next year and, bring you out as a staff coach and everything. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I hit the lottery. 2 days later, I'm off to Fiji and going.
Yeah, man.
And, I was like, wow, this manifestation thing mindset works really well.
Something to this.
Something to. I remember even saying that we were talking in the hot tub there at one point after like a week into it. It was a bunch of us hanging out and they were all drinking, having a good time. We were talking about mindset and manifestation. And I go, I'll prove to you all right now that whole thing works. You want to know how? And they go, yeah. I go, and I started yelling. I go, because I'm fucking here right now. That's why I go. That's it. I go, I've been manifesting this thing. So now, I get to go every year as a coach. So I work on Namotu with Ben Wilson, who's a legend and amazing coaches there. And then I've been to the Marshall Islands to work with Rio Stevens on his retreats there. And here on Maui, I've met amazing human beings from all walks of life. I'm not going to name drop, but, I've definitely worked with some pretty extraordinary people, and not just clients, but, like coaches and that become friends, lifelong friends and all that stuff. So
I love that story. I'm such a huge believer in the power of mindset and visualization and manifestation. And I have a slightly different approach to it. And it's something I don't share with people very often, but I think in order to prove your commitment to the like manifestation process, you kind of have to like prove yourself to whatever underlying energy is allowing it to be. So for example, if I'm trying to create something, or I'm trying to will something into existence, whether it's an experience or a set of circumstances or a revolutionary change in my own life, I don't just like ask for it. I visualize it. I have this thought in my mind, but I also feel that like I need to kind of pay in advance to show my commitment to whatever process is taking place that, I can't understand, right? I don't understand how energy and randomness and all that works. So I'll be like, I'll come up with some ridiculous amount of suffering. Oh, hey, I'm going to go swim 6 miles in 50-degree water without a wetsuit. And in doing so, I create these challenges. Yeah. And I will say I have 100% success rate with whatever it was I was in the market for. And I know how to ask. I know how to approach, things very methodically, where I will ultimately receive what it is, whatever change or growth it is that I'm seeking. But I also think that whether that's all bullshit or not, the process to get there, the work that I do, it primes my brain for like, it creates more neural pathways that are open to allowing these changes to take place.
Well, that's a great thing. I was thinking about this lately too, because I started doing jiu-jitsu. I'll get to that in a second. But you are training yourself for life in a controlled environment. Absolutely. Is what it is.
Yes.
So we all have to get used to being uncomfortable. We all have to get used to overcoming adversity. Sorry.
The rosary.
The rosary. So, some people, like religious people, trust in God and faith, and, and we trust in, the powers that be, whatever. And then you also have to trust in yourself a little bit to navigate the waters. And like, I started doing jiu-jitsu. I'm so hooked on it. And one of the things I was rolling with, actually, Andrea Moeller taught me this. So I went to the advanced class. She's a black belt.
She's a black belt.
I'm a two-stripe. I'm a one-stripe white belt, right? So I'm so green. Anyway, so she's letting me work, as we call it, and I could tell she could just strangle me in a heartbeat. So I'm just throwing some things out there, and I don't mind experimenting with like, all right, let's see what happens here. Even if I know I'm going to lose it, whatever, let's just see what it's like. But I tried throwing like a Kimura lock while she still had me, I think, in a half guard. And she goes, all right, why'd you do that? And I, just asked me genuinely like, okay, now why would you do that? I go, I don't know, I had your arm, so I thought I'd just try to submit you. And then she explained, and Luis, who owns the academy, he's explained this too. You can't try to win you can't try submission until you've gotten control. So if you're on
position over submission.
Yeah. So if you're in the defense, you have to overcome that defense, get control, and then plan your submission, then execute. Just like football, you have to learn your defense, get the ball back before you try to score the touchdown, unless you get lucky, whatever, which happens. Or, what's the other thing I was thinking of? Volleyball. You have to win the serve back to serve to score the point. And that's how life is. Shit happens. Things happen. So when you get good and actually embrace defense, and I was thinking about it the other day, because this last year has been one hell of a freaking year. And, I got to say, I'm a little proud of myself that I've fought so many wars at this point that I keep pulling it off. And that's like the kind of faith, like, oh, you're going to trust God now whenever you're in a jam. Okay. So it's like, and even my therapist has talked me through it. He goes, you'll come through this. Because, when the fires happen, which was horrible, obviously, and my business was shut down. I'm like, all right, we have tragedy all around. What am I going to do? So I did my best just to get in action and keep myself occupied and see where I could help and serve. And there's way worse than I am. So it was a full adrenaline pumping type situation. And then I was worried about the business afterwards. But nonetheless, things are coming along and I'm coming out of it. And again, it was another war. I was on the defense. Now I'm getting back to control, and now I'm getting back on the offense. So I was telling my son recently, I go, it's good to stress yourself out and make yourself uncomfortable in a controlled environment. Like if you have some money, it's good to gamble a little bit on that in a positive way, start a business, whatever it is. It really sucks when you're trying to get out from credit card debt, bank debt, whatever it is. Like if you're always like trying to fight your way out of a hole, as I was talking about earlier, back when I was drinking, I'd fight my way out of a hole, get to even, and then go back in a hole again. And that causes a shitload of cortisol stress.
Absolutely.
When you're doing it more on the offense, you're creating more adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin stress, which is good stress.
We call it eustress.
Eustress
is the term for it.
I love that.
EU stress.
Yeah.
Eustress. Hey, I know we're on a roll. You have to go, right?
Oh, yeah.
Do you want me to wrap it up?
Yeah, I guess we should. Yeah, I got to go to the chiropractor.
Right, I don't want to. Hold on. Let's see if he gets this recording again. All right. We're rolling? All right, go ahead and finish your thought, and then I'll close it out.
Anyway, I was just saying. So there's a defense game, there's the offense game. Life's gonna happen, shit's gonna happen. You're gonna have to overcome adversity, get on the offense again. So just like jiu-jitsu, get out from underneath, get on top, take control, go for the submission.
Position over submission.
So,
that's
like
what it's
that.
all about. Brother Brett, thank you so much for joining, man. Always great to catch up with you.
Likewise.
And man, I look forward to more of these. I think we got a lot to explore for sure.
Oh yeah.
But for today, man, thank you for telling us your story, sharing. Keep kicking ass, man. You're like a truly inspiring human. Every time I log on Instagram, I always look for my Maui True North update, and I love the stuff you're doing with Adaptive Maui, with Uncle's Movement, with your own business. Just a true radical human, man. I'm honored to call you my brother, bro.
Oh, thanks, brother. Honor and a pleasure, man. Appreciate you. And if, for those of you who don't know what True North is, can you explain it?
Maui True North. So we always have to have our true north, our compass in life that guides us to where we're going. So that's Brett's ethos in life, is he always wants to be pointing towards his true north. He also, his logo, for those who haven't seen it, is also very near and dear to my heart, because the Maui M is fucking Metallica. True metalhead after my own blood. Brother, thank you so much, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.